the Carlington Booch brew off, the home brew do-it-yourself video, and we're going to take you through getting one of our kits right into making it, and then hopefully drinking it and recreating over and over the product, and coming up with your own flavors and whatnot. So we're going to teach you all about pH. What does pH stand for?
I just know pH.
I knew that would happen. You can Google that, and we got a hydrometer. What does the hydrometer measure?
It's measuring the sugar content.
Measures the dissolved sugar in a liquid in water, and then we got a refractometer. What does that measure?
Also measures the sugar.
It also measures the sugar in a liquid, and what's the units that it measures by?
60 grams.
Bricks. Bricks is the unit.
Okay, I didn't realize this was a test day.
This is almost like a test day, but it's really important to. My point is, it's important to balance your kombucha. Kombucha is a fermented tea. It's instead of using a beer yeast or the process of a wine or kefir, we use a SCOBY, a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, to eat all the sugar in the tea and the tannins of the tea, and produces a acidic, almost like a apple cider vinegar. It's great for your gut. We want to brew around 3.2 pH, and then have sugar content of 4.5 bricks, and so it's not too sweet. So that is the trick of kombucha, to balance it. We have some simple tools, and anybody can.
I just want to know, what was your first experience with kombucha?
Experience was probably on your balcony about.
That was your first time.
4 years ago, and your wife had made this brew under her cabinet counter, and I was coming over for a cigar, and I don't drink coffee, and I stopped drinking alcohol in 2005, and I had a beautiful beverage, and I was like, this is the nectar of the gods. I need more of this, and I did get more of it, and so I have all you can drink for. No, we brew our kombucha. We were looking for a social enterprise to go with our church group, and so we want to help people. We call it Booching the Gap, is to take guys and girls from addiction into recovery and help them get some volunteer opportunities and job opportunities, and help them transform their lives. So that's kind of the reason behind social enterprise. Kombucha just is like the nectar of the gods. It's actually transforming sugar tea into something that's useful, full of probiotics, full of good bacteria, great for your gut health and detoxification and boosting your immune system. So it has just comes from a plain ordinary thing into something really special and great tasting. So that's kind of why we do it and what we do, and we have some tools of the trade to help you with that. And so we have a pH meter. It's like $30 or $20 online. This is the one that we have. It's pretty simple. It just teaches you, it just reads pH. We want to start at a certain pH and bring it down to about a 3.2. And then we have a refractometer. You can get these for probably $1,000, but you can also get them for probably $20. And so this is a refractometer, and it measures in bricks, and it measures the dissolved sugar in a product. So water would be 0. And then we have, this is probably the most accurate and what the beer and wine brewers use. Right now I'm boiling some water, so you might want to do that. Well, we're boiling some water just to dissolve, steep our tea real quick, and then dissolve our sugar. So I'm doing that right now. And then this is what is this?
That's a hydrometer.
Hydrometer. So beer and wine guys use this all the time, and it you fill it up, and it is buoyant and measures the sugar content. So this is a very exact way of measuring sugar. So what we would do, if you want to make alcohol, this is what you would do. You add a certain amount of sugar. Let's say it's 5,000 grams of sugar in a certain amount of water. What we want to do is turn that sugar into alcohol. And so I measure 5,000 grams of sugar, and it reads, let's say, 1.05 on my hydrometer. I come back 2 weeks later, and it's reading 1.02. I can subtract the 0.5 from the 0.2, and it actually tells me how much alcohol I will have in that beverage. So it's very important to us that we minimize the alcohol content. There are going to be traces in kombucha no matter what. Home brewers actually can get a lot more than you would think. You could easily into 1 and 2 percent sugar or alcohol. So if you have alcohol sensitivity, be mindful of that. You will be able to taste it. If there's too much alcohol, if there's too much acidity, if there's too much sugar, your kombucha is not balanced and it tastes off. You don't get the flavors properly. So super important to balance. Those are some tricks of the trade, tools of the trade, I guess.
Yeah.
Super cheap if you want to get into it like me. I like to do a little hobby, but I like to go all out and know what the values of everything are and balance things perfectly. Once you start adding sugars, you're going to up your sugar content. Once you start adding fruit, you will up the sugar values. So it's important to know that kind of stuff to balance it perfectly if you want. If not, I think over time, if you don't keep things balanced, it's like turning a big ship around in the St. Lawrence Seaway, and sooner or later you're going the wrong way, and all of a sudden you hate home brewing because you're running into all these problems. So it's super important to keep everything balanced, everything clean. We'll give you tips on that.
So in terms of alcohol content, when they're carbonated at home, you're saying if they were to let it carbonate or let the bottle sit for longer, then what's happening?
You're going to get more alcohol content, and the sugar dissolved will determine how much alcohol content there is. So you can actually overcarbonate. The way we do it is not like a beer would be. Beer, they want very low sugar, so they want to dissolve all their sugar. Glucose is what they would use. And we use stuff that's harder for the yeast to actually dissolve the sugar. So it's a little bit harder in the kombucha world to get really potent alcohol. But we could do it.
Yeah.
Just trade your sugar to dextrose and you'll get a lot of alcohol content. Not wrong, just a different way of doing things.
If you guys have questions as you're watching, feel free to
just keep them to yourself and Google them. All right, so we're going to start our brew. I have a lot of these, so we're going to get our tea bag. We're going to get our I measured off 2 cups of hot water, and so I have that in here. I was already boiling it. We're going to put it in here and steep our tea. Black tea, the steeping temperature of water for black tea must be around 100 degrees Celsius. And then green tea actually steeps best at 70. We here at Carlington Booch, and me and Josh, I personally have played with tons of different teas, from white tea to oolong tea. Josh is muddling the tea. We like to use the word muddle. It's very scientific. It just means
foreplay.
It means foreplay on the tea bag. So Josh is gonna muddle. He's like almost a pro muddler here, and he's going to. You threw me right off. Muddle away, Josh. And what was I saying? I don't even know what I was saying. You got me so thrown off. We're going to muddle our tea here. Finesse. Muddle with finesse. We're going to muddle our tea. I like to weigh out all of the water first, and the tea and the sugar.
You were talking about tea types.
Oh,
white
tea types.
Black tea, green tea.
Bring me in. Josh has been around me teaching long enough that he knows he needs to know what I'm talking about, because sometimes I get lost. So we've brewed with the array of tea types, from oolong to green to different types of green to black teas. And I found that black tea is the most solid consistent tea. It has a bit of an acidic bite to it as we brew. And then green tea has more of a fruity flavors, and I'm talking about through the fermentation process. So it has, like, I would describe it as a appley taste. And so I want to kind of balance the acidic black tea, which is super consistent. It has tons of tannins in it, so it's really good for fermenting. And I want to kind of uphold it and bring out its strengths by adding something a little more fruity. So that's why I personally like a combination of green and black tea. For this video, we go 3 to 1.
So we
3 to 1 ratio. Green being 1, black being 3. No,
so it's two thirds black,
2/3 black, 1/3 green.
We're all mathematicians.
I got the dyslexia. I should be better at math, but and so I've tried oolong tea. I've tried white tea. White tea does not ferment. So if you're going to try to use white tea to ferment, stop right now. You could add it to a black tea like we do to the green tea. I don't know what it'll do, but I learned that on my own because my white tea was not fermenting in my research and development. So
now, what about herbal teas?
Herbal teas are fine. Flavored teas are great. Anything that you want to use, you can do your own research and development. Be your own research and development team. But first of all, if we're just doing one batch, I like to get the waters all prepared. So I have 2 cups of hot water. I have 10.5 cups of cold water. Because there's some rules to the SCOBY. There's rules to yeast and bacteria. So a couple of the rules is, number 1, it can't have sun. So don't be like, look at my glorious brew. I'm going to put it in the windowsill and kind of use it as a stained glass window for the enjoyment of everybody in the living room. Don't do that. Hide it. Put it in a closet. And then heat, it does not like heat, so I like to not ever put anything over 60 degrees temperature in. This is Celsius. And then soap, hate soap.
And you're talking specifically the SCOBY at this point.
Yeah,
that's what you're...
and the contents of your kombucha. So soap, metal, you can use stainless steel. And what else? Doesn't like harsh waters, doesn't like bleach, anything like that, any cleaners. So if you're doing this, I would actually put out my water, like get your jug of water and let it sit out for a few hours. It actually evaporates the chlorine in it. I don't know where you're from, but maybe your chlorine level is a lot higher. I know that our chlorine is pretty high, so we actually filter all of our water here on site as we brew kombucha. So feel free to do that at some level. You can use other filters and whatnot, but just letting it sit out is a great asset to kind of getting rid of the harsh chemicals of chlorine. So we're steeping our tea. You can do this. Give me the muddler. Going to continue to muddle a little bit. And we're going to do what we call a cold rinse. So what I have, I'm going to put our cold water in this container. And I'm going to grab the muddler. You can buy these super cheap at the dollar store?
Dollar store,
dollar store, oh, the grocery store.
You probably already have them in your house.
And then what I'm going to do is transfer the tea. And this is a cold rinse. Not everybody will show you that. And then what we're going to do with this hot water, we're going to stir in our sugar. That is, how much sugar, Josh?
That's 1 cup of sugar.
Josh, it's supposed to be 2 cups. Just kidding. Josh knows what he's doing. I like to distract him sometimes. He likes to second guess himself. I like working with a guy that's not super confident, overconfident. So you gotta keep testing them. So we're going to dissolve our sugar. Super important that it all dissolves. I'm doing the little cold bath. Little bathing beauty here. Look how much tea is coming off of in the cold rinse. There you go. I have washed my hands before this video. I'm going to squeeze out my tea bag. get all that good stuff out. And how much tea was in there, Josh, for one batch? 14 cups of kombucha.
So we had 18 grams of black tea and we had 6 grams of green.
And that will come in your kit. The sugar will come in your kit. And so what we want to do is not have hot water and the starter tea mixing together. So that's why we're taking this 2 cups of hot water, steeping, doing our sugar, a little cold bath. We're going to put that into our brewing vessel. This is our brewing vessel. You can get something that'll hold at least 14 cups. If you're like me, you will want to start with 28 cups and then quickly move to a massive barrel. I have three 300 or 250 liter barrels right behind me. So if you're like me, things take off a little bit sometimes. All right, so, you got our sugar dissolved.
So can they use tea bags at home?
You can use tea bags at home. You would use 8 tea bags, correct?
Yeah. Depend on the size of the tea bag, but yeah.
Yeah, so I would just use 8 tea bags. So you could go 5 black and you know another tea that I use. What's that tea at Tim Hortons that everybody gets? The not chai tea. No, the other one. I don't know. It has like anyway. I should think before I talk. I didn't do that.
But anyway, so when you are at home, because we brew in bulk, we have the loose leaf tea. So you can use.
So I'm gonna pour our sugar and tea water in there. It's hot right now, and then this is cooling it off. And so that's tea and our sugar. All the tannins from the tea have been extracted. You could do more extractation if you wanted the sugar in there. We use an organic cane sugar. You could use white table. There's a whole variety of sugars. You can play with that. I like the organic cane sugar because it doesn't ferment very quickly. If you want things to ferment quickly, just add a different kind of sugar like glucose or dextrose or that kind of thing. And you'll be off to the races very quickly and probably have alcoholic kombucha. So this is a way to really confine all that stuff. So we're going to add in our water,
yep.
Correct? What would be our pH level right now, Josh?
You know what? We don't need to play games. Like when we got a tester, we can just test it and we'll figure it out.
I would say our pH level would be about 5.8.
Currently, we're at 5.5.
Ho ho ho!
I'm not high-fiving that.
This guy right here. And then we're going to add our starter tea. This is 1.5 cups. Typically, you could use 2 cups of starter tea. So what you're going to do, it's like when you make sourdough bread or whatever, you're always going to take from the bread that you're making. So you're always keeping this amount back. And you're always keeping a little bit of SCOBY. The SCOBY isn't necessarily the thing that you want. The thing that you want is the juice from the last batch. The SCOBY actually tells you that you have yeast and bacteria, and it actually the SCOBY actually tells you what you have in there in our brew. I put that in, correct?
Yep.
So make sure you don't have soap on your hands. Make sure your hands are clean, but no soap products or anything. We're going to put this in, and the little SCOBY will probably sink to the bottom. But what will happen because of the yeast culture in here, because of the bacteria in here, once it starts eating, it's going to form a skin on the top, and that's your new SCOBY. So that will be precious to you. I would highly suggest naming him or her and really taking care of it that way. Do you want to talk about SCOBY care?
SCOBY care.
We get some big SCOBYs. Our SCOBYs go...
So you'll see as your SCOBY grows, the longer you let this thing sit in the jar,
Oh, she is so happy right now. She has just been released from here. You don't want to suffocate her. Or him. You got to check the gender. And so even if I know with homebrewers are like, there's no end. You just got to keep going and going. What I would do is put my starter tea in here, a little bit of SCOBY, put on the lid loosely and sit it in the fridge and it'll go dormant. And every month, just take it out for a week and keep putting it back. But it can go dormant for quite some time. Eventually, you will murder it. So you don't want to come under those accusations of being a murderer. And so you do want to take care of your SCOBY, but you can kind of put it on ice. You don't want to suffocate it necessarily, and the cold, it'll just make it dormant. One thing that will happen, yeast is a lot stronger than the bacteria. The bacteria might just die off, and the yeast will take over. So those are little things that you want to watch out for. So yeah, you can put your brew on pause and come back a few months later and get back at her.
So your SCOBY will also take on different colors, or it can take on different colors.
What's the color you want?
Typically, you want like a whitish color, but depending on the tea that you use, it will take on the color of the tea as well.
It will, and the flavor of the tea. So personally, I like to brew kombucha in here, and then take out of the brewing vessel what I want to do with it. And so we'll flavor it different ways. We can add different stuff. You can be very creative. This, I like to keep the same flavor of the SCOBY and of my starter tea and all that, and not always be changing that flavor. And so you'll see right now our little SCOBY is floating, and very quickly, probably in a week, you'll have probably in a couple days, you'll have a scum. If you keep your brew in temperature, I struggle with room temperature, so like 21 degrees, it's hard for this to engage and react to the tea and start eating and start fermenting. I would suggest that you get somewhere warmer, so 25 degrees. We love 30 degrees around here. We actually, to get the natural carbonation, after we bottle, we actually put it under heat, and it can go up to about 35 degrees. And so that's super hot. But we're talking Celsius. I know that there's some Americans. God bless America. I know that I don't know Fahrenheits and stuff, so you'll have to Google that again or ask somebody smart.
But we put it under extreme heat just to speed up the process. So at home, you can get the same product. It'll just take a little bit longer.
In a couple weeks, yeah. So what we're going to do is, if you have a piece of felt, did you know that felt, my friends, is recycled plastic bottles part? So most felt that you would buy is actually recycled bottles. And so felt is amazing for straining any liquid. Beekeepers use it. Maple syrup, I don't know if Americans know what maple syrup is, but up in Canada, we drink it by the shooter. We go buy some Jack Daniels and some maple syrup, and that's a good weekend. And so you want to use this to strain any of your kombucha. It's an amazing. It's just I'm fascinated with felt. I always thought it was like wool or something, but it's recycled bottles. So the liquid goes through it really good, and it catches everything on it. So what you can do is, you don't really want to suffocate this. So I know that it comes with a rubber lid. If you just take that rubber lid off and just kept it like that, you'd probably be. You're going to find out that you're going to nest and encourage what?
The horrible fruit fly infestation.
The are organic and come out of whatever you're doing. And so we suggest that you put like a cover on like this, or however you want to do it. So I personally don't mind a tight cover, but just not, probably not 100% choking it. So right now it can breathe. Every couple days you might just want to lift that up a bit like that. and just keep it brewing and get the air in there, keep it warm, and whatnot.
Or do you want them to put an elastic around that and take the lid off?
If you wanna be cool, like Josh, you could put an elastic around it and go like that, and go, I'm cool like Josh. But yeah, you're not so cool right now. I thought I was cool by putting the lid down. Yeah, and you can have it like that, just loosely. If you're starting to get the dreaded fruit fly, then yeah, enjoy them. But just shut her down. Just lock it up for a couple days. You'll get rid of the fruit flies. There might be some floating fruit flies in your kombucha, but you got to be okay with that. It's not going to kill you. I think that we all eat like 100 pounds of bugs a year or whatever, and so bugs are good. So what you're going... Oh, what's another problem that can happen?
We don't eat 100 pounds of bugs a year, and bugs are...
No, scientifically, they've proven that we all eat 100 pounds of bugs. I don't know.
So one thing you might read as well is when you're trying, if you some people add vinegar to their kombucha to try and balance it off, and you can do that, but when you start putting vinegar in, you are going to be increasing your chance of getting vinegar eels.
Vinegar eels, real thing, real problem, hard to go away.
So when we first started, I had no idea what vinegar eels was, and they terrified me.
Terrifying.
So
it's like having a termite infestation. But once again, if you don't have air to them and you clean properly, then you will be vinegar eel free. We use a sanitizer, so it's like you can get that at the brewing stores, so wine stores. You can get like this sanitizer. It's dilutable in water, and you just spray it and make sure your stuff is sanitized, but make sure that the sanitizer does not come in contact with the kombucha itself. We could measure right now the bricks. Do you want to do that real quick?
Sure.
We're going to just measure real quick what we are, because this is what we would do, because we love consistency. And we're just going to put a drop on here and measure the bricks. You got to look at the light. This is a refractometer, so I'm going to look at the light. And we're very high, so we're at about 7 bricks. We want that to come way down. We want that to be about 5. We want that to be around 4. What's our average? What do we go for?
We're depending on our flavor.
Sweet kombucha is rough. I don't like sweet kombucha. I would rather have tangy tart kombucha any day over sweet poppy like pop like kombucha. So you're going to sit and pray and watch and love. You can I like to hold him or her, and I think that's it's a living organism. So you wanna cheer it on. You want to project your love onto it. You want to be good vibe into it. Like if you and the missus are fighting and arguing, this is like the child, so it will pick up on the bad stuff, and maybe the SCOBY will turn orange,
put some classical
purple.
music around it.
Yeah. I would put some music, classical, maybe classical.
Well, they say that for women who are pregnant, put classical music up.
You just want it to be chill and loved, and know that it's special and valued. That's the goal. That's the key.
Okay.
How many days?
Because it's the first brew, I would say keep it longer. I'd say keep it up to 21 days.
Yeah, I would stir it a little bit. You're adding 2 liquids together, and do pH. Let's see what the pH, because the pH before we added the starter tea was what?
5.5.
5.5, and now it should be around 3.5. What was it?
3.4.
3.4. I'm pretty good at this game. So what I would always do, because you got pH, you got some science in there, but science cannot beat your tongue. Unless your partner says your tongue's stuck, shut up. But this is our pre-kombucha. This is the beginning. So you want to taste it. you'll taste a lot of tea, you'll taste a lot of sugar, you'll taste a lot of separate things. And so
I know what it tastes like.
drink.
It's COVID, bro.
Share a glass, man. I would suggest that you're always drinking so that in your mind you know the perfect balance, because your tongue will actually tell you a lot more than a stick that's bobbing in water. Well, it'll tell you a lot too. But you taste with your tongue. You taste 4 major elements with your tongue, and so with your tasting, you always put it in your mouth, put it in your tongue, and then maybe add some air because it'll aerate it a bit like they do with wine glasses. But always be smelling, because you can actually taste more out of your nostrils than you can out of your mouth. Google that one too. There's science behind that. Okay, so
That's gross.
so here we are. 21 days.
21 days.
You want to taste it. Give it a little stir. There's going to be skin on top. Maybe give it a little stir and then taste it. And if you taste an acidic, tangy, fruity, like you're not just tasting tea and sugar and water, you're tasting a complex variety of tangy, sweet, tart. And if you're happy with that, you can do some measurements if it's down at 3.2 pH, if the sugar has dropped significantly, and there's a good SCOBY on it, then you know it's ready. So having it be ready, I need my jar back.
Which one would you like?
My jar. Okay. Just use it. And we need our spoon. And so what I'm going to do is take out my SCOBY. I'm going to take out my SCOBY. I'm going to measure off 2 cups of starter tea. This, my friends, is like the ring of the Lord of the Rings. This is the precious. So you keep that off to the side. Make sure you know it's valued and loved. You're mixing up its nest here. And so just know that there's some separation anxiety that's probably happening.
So that is for now. That's for what?
This is for your next batch. If you're not ready to brew, just put it in the fridge, or put a light lid on it so that it can still breathe a bit. And you can just leave it out, but it is going to continue to ferment. We've had stuff sitting out like this for a month or 2 months, and the lid, the lid actually warped on it, because what's happening is it's producing carbon dioxide as it ferments.
So it is critical to do this before you add any flavoring to your kombucha.
So what you can do now, there's some options that we have. You can, whatever fruit, whatever you like, you can just crush it up. You can mull it up, berries, and put it right in here. You could do that into each bottle. You could slice up ginger and put it in here. You can add juice and put it in here and sample it, and then your bottles are all going to be the same. So play around with that, but just know that you're adding a lot of sugar when it comes to fruit. Even ginger has quite a bit of sugar in it, and that's how you flavor.
Do they need the flavor?
You don't need to flavor. We personally have a naked, and it is the plain kombucha. If it's balanced, it's amazing. It's my favorite. It's my go-to. But I love ginger, so we do a ginger. We press ginger, and then we like, you can use a grinder or pestle, a mortar and pestle, and we grind up the. We do cardamom and lavender flowers, so you can get any of this stuff at the bulk barn. And what we would do is just let it sit in there.
At the bulk barn?
At the bulk barn. They sell bulk stuff. And so I would flavor it all in here with the ginger juice, the cardamom, the lavender. And I would probably just let it sit there for a day or two. And then I would use my felt. You keep taking everything from me. I would use my felt, and I would pour the liquid into the bucket that I'm going to fill my bottles with.
And why are you doing that? Why are you straining it?
I just don't like floating stuff necessarily. I love floating SCOBY, the little slimy. That's like the prize in the cereal box. I think that's good, but like, I don't if you like floating stuff, then go ahead and have floating stuff. Lots of people do. So what I would do now is bottle. Josh, grab that bottle.
So can you do this? You can also do this individually per glass. So if you want to do a blueberry glass and a
yeah. So if I wanted to do blueberry, I would just muddle up my pester and mortar. I would do that and then put the blueberries in here, or juice the blueberries. Put blueberry juice. You can buy different organic juice flavors from the grocery store. You can add a little bit of flavor and play around with that. That's
but people don't need to be limited to their entire brew being one flavor.
That's true. Good word, Josh. So Josh is gonna fill this up. You got this, Josh. You can talk loving to the kombucha as it goes in. You can do this. You got this. I know that you're separated from mom right now, but everything's gonna be okay. You're gonna serve a higher purpose. You're valued, highly favored. Yeah.
There we go.
I talked him through it. You might want to add a little bit more, Josh.
Just waiting for some of those bubbles to go down.
And then what we're going to do, because we've done this before, is we're going to actually fill a plastic bottle. So if you have a plastic bottle, you'll notice one thing, that you can actually squeeze it in. Glass, I can't squeeze that in. You're just popping glass. Another thing that you want to be concerned about is over fermenting glass. You can have exploding glass bottles. It has happened in this brewery. So I never know how much CO2, because we do everything naturally. I never know how much CO2 is in a glass bottle. Although you can burp it and whatnot. Burping it just means, do you want to just top that up a little bit? Burping it just means, you know, taking the lid off and letting it breathe. I would prefer not to burp it. I would prefer just to go into fermentation right now. Do you want to hit that? And put the lid on, and you'll be 2 weeks like this. And so what we do with the plastic bottle, and you probably have already guessed this by now, but what we do is we put it's an airtight lid, airtight bottle. You can use a Coke bottle or a fancy bottle like we have right here. This is what we actually bottle our kombucha in, and then we let this sit. You can put it in a little bit of a warm spot. Remember, no sun, no cold, and if you have a temperature of 25 degrees, you're talking about 2 weeks. And this will start after a week or two. It'll start hard, and so when this is rock hard, you know that you have a good amount of carbon in it. Don't be scared to let it go rock hard. Like you got a long way to go. What's happening is that through the fermentation process, the yeast and the bacteria is continuing to work in eating the sugars and the tannins of the tea and producing carbon. And so it's going to adhere to the oxygen instead of force carbonating something like you do with kegs, and most pop companies would do that, beer companies. It's all force carbonated. So this is actually force carbonating it naturally. And so this will get rock hard. When you think it's rock hard enough, put it in the fridge, and it will totally go dormant on you.
So over the course of days and weeks, if you keep grabbing this, you'll test it on day one, squeeze it, see what it feels like. After that, you'll feel it gradually go harder and harder.
So the other thing that I like to do, especially with any volunteers that come into the Booch pit, into the brewery, I always, as a sign of manhood, I get them to eat a piece of SCOBY. People think that the SCOBY is ugly and horrible and horrendous, and they can't imagine even drinking anything out of it. So we always make our volunteers eat some.
We can't imagine life
without
it.
Yeah, so cheers, have a SCOBY. This is... It's beautifully flavored, tastes nice, and I know that what it's going to do to my gut. This is a chew one. It's been sitting out for a while. Yeah, it's a slime.
Slime. Wow. Got a couple of tears.
My hands are water. That was a strong one. All right, I got that down.
What does it go back to burp? What does it mean to burp?
So what's going to happen is, over the course of time, a couple reasons is that this is going to probably carbonate faster than the flavors are going to change, but people do it differently. you won't have to burp this way, but burping it just means you're releasing the head pressure, pop, and then you can continue to ferment it. But it's not going to carbonate that way. So I don't burp nothing. There's no reason for it unless you're doing it a different style. But you got all your fruit in here. And then just let it sit. Make sure you feel this after probably 2 weeks. So you got 3 weeks. You got a month in here, and then you got 2 weeks in here minimum. And don't be in a hurry. But if you really love kombucha, just keep brewing more vessels and bigger vessels. You can have 3 of these going at the same time, and just keep track of them. Name them. Name them. Super important. We got Jeremy going right now. We got Andy, and we got Jevin. Jevin's on the we name all of our starter teas. We brew in a much bigger capacity, but this is basically how we do it. This is how you would do it at home.
So after they've bottled, how long are we thinking?
After you bottle, we're probably 2 weeks. 2 weeks out from drinking it. So when it's rock hard, 2 weeks in the warmth, no sun, put it in the fridge. And then you want it harder than you think don't be scared of it. It's not gonna, this has a lower PSI value than a plastic container. So just know that this will break before this, but this has to be rock hard for that to cause a breakage.
But what they can also do.
The other thing is, you'll get some bottles, 1 liter bottles, especially and no diss in IKEA because they're bigger and powerful than us and make meatballs. So much love to IKEA, but they sell 1 liter bottles and they have a horrible lid on it. They're for water. They're not pressurized. At your local brewery, home brewer wine kit place, you can buy these kind of caps, swing caps. Grosch bottles have them, but you got to make sure that is very sealed. Otherwise, just brew in things that will be sealed. So just make sure your top is like the swing top variety, very sealed, and that kind of thing.
So everyone on this call also will receive kombucha as well, so they can drink that booch. But then you guys can use your empty bottles.
Yeah.
As fillable. So we gave you guys some empty bottles, like new bottles, but you guys can also reuse the used bottles. Wash them up and you're good.
Wash them up and you're good, Josh. All right.
Is there any questions?
Is there any questions?